All right, so we've been talking about characteristics of living things, and we are up to the fourth characteristic of living things that we have sort of split this up into, and that is that living things reproduce. And what we mean by that is that living things contain genetic information that is passed on to their offspring. Their offspring are related to them, and that genetic information is incorporated in DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid, which of course we know is found on genes, which are found on your chromosomes, but even bacteria, even the simplest living things, have DNA. This is a characteristic all cells have, not viruses. Again, I mentioned that viruses are not considered a living thing. Viruses actually do not metabolize, as I said, they're not made of cells. And they don't all have DNA. Some viruses only have RNA. They have some kind of genetic information. And that genetic information is the information for a cell to use to build a new virus. So you have to have that genetic information incorporated somehow. But living things have DNA, their genetic information like blueprints, which then can be passed on. And if you think about it, it's pretty amazing that you came from a single cell. That single cell didn't have eyes and a nose and all those characteristics and all the tissues and cell types and everything. All the information to build all of that was incorporated in the DNA. And so what DNA really is, your genetic information, it's the blueprints for building everything about you. It tells the cells how to specialize, when to live, when to die, when to reproduce, what proteins should be made and when those things should be made. Hormones, enzymes, pigments, all of that stuff is controlled by your DNA. Those are all different types of proteins. And then related to that, number 5, finally, living things evolve. Now, this is very, very important. Evolution is a core theme in biology. We don't individually evolve. If it gets really, really cold, I'm not going to suddenly grow fur to survive. If all the food is up high, I am not going to suddenly grow a long neck so I can reach it. It doesn't work like that. I'm stuck with whatever genes I've inherited. What we mean by living things evolve is that we know that this DNA gets passed on. And every time the DNA gets passed on, particularly in sexual reproduction, there's a brand new combination, right? You're not exactly your mom or your dad. You're a combination of half of each of their DNA. And that actually gives you specific traits that may be different than theirs. That new combination of DNA can actually give you different traits. So that's what we're talking about here, accumulation of heritable or inherited changes that happen. Not only does every time, two people have a child, do they give them a new combination of their genes, but in addition to that, keep in mind that mutations happen. DNA does sometimes have mistakes in it, and those mistakes or mutations, they might not necessarily be a bad thing. We think of mutations as being bad, you're born without pigment in your skin, or you can't digest lactose or whatever. But these mutations can be good things too. It could be something that allows you to survive in colder weather or blend with your environment if you're an organism that predators hunt you, or store fat better, or etc. So mutations also provide us with new traits. So you get changes in the DNA, which are mutations in every time a new organism is born, and you have new combinations of DNA anytime sexual reproduction occurs. You're not exactly like your siblings. You only share about 25% of your DNA with them. Because technically, they have the same two parents, but remember, each time your parent has randomly given only certain portions of their DNA, so every child is a completely unique combination of those things. So populations evolve, not individuals, but populations. The human population, a human population can evolve. A population of moths can evolve. A population of trees can evolve. Because some trees are taller than others, and if tall is a benefit, the ones that are taller are going to probably survive longer, make more offspring, and therefore pass on that same DNA for being tall, and so 100 years later, all the trees are taller. Not because short trees turned tall, but because the taller trees were the ones that passed those genes on. And we're going to talk a lot more about genetics and evolution. This is going to be the main focus of actually second semester. But this is a driving force and a main characteristic of living things, is that we pass on our genes, we reproduce, and as a species, we evolve. And a lot of that has to do with natural selection, which is, you've heard survival of the fittest, but basically the idea that some traits that you have may make you better able to survive and have more offspring, and therefore contribute to the next generation. Other traits may be bad, and those traits are less likely to get passed on, which means there's going to be less offspring that look like you if you're carrying those bad traits because you're not passing them on. But chance plays a role too. You know, it's possible that you have the best traits in the world and you have superpowers, but, you know, something bad happens and you don't get the chance to reproduce. You don't pass that on. Not because it was a bad trait, but just random chance. So there's a lot of things that play here, but that's what we're speaking about when we talk about individuals evolving. And because we know that DNA is passed on and that mutations do occur at kind of a steady rate, we can actually use that to track relationships in family trees. I know you can send off for a genetic test and find out if somebody's related to you, that they're your sister or they're your cousin, or they can make these kinds of predictions because we know that you're going to share a certain portion of your DNA. And in cladograms and in phylogenetic trees where we try to build up, okay, how closely related is the polar bear to the brown bear and the panda bear? How do we build those relationships? We can actually look at the DNA and go, oh, well, look at that. These two bears, all of these bears have this same mutation. So most likely that mutation happened at some point in time in their lineage. And then, oh, this one has an additional mutation. And we can actually build these family trees based on their genetic relationships, looking at how these mutations kind of occurred over time. And we'll talk a lot more about this, like I said, second semester. All of these pigeons are genetically related. This is sort of artificial selection, where people have said, "Ooh, I really like these fluffy feathers that this bird has, this mutation. So I'm going to purposely breed this one with some other one," and you get all these different things. We see the same thing with dogs and cats, where we've kind of created these almost subspecies, and they may look very, very different. Underlying most of their DNA, probably 99% is the same, but just looking at a few little mutations can cause big changes in, change their color, change their size, change the shape of certain feathers or whatever. Okay, and that's pretty much it, but the last thing that I want to cover is just the fact that despite the fact that we are very diverse, there are unifying things about us, and I've kind of mentioned this. Number one, DNA. DNA is the universal genetic language. All living things have DNA. Not only do we all have DNA, but the DNA is interpreted the same way. In other words, if I was to take the gene from a jellyfish, that is the DNA code for making the protein that makes them glow underwater, I can take that gene that makes that glowing protein, and I can put it into a bacteria, an E. coli bacterium. And guess what? That bacterium will glow. It will make the same protein that the jellyfish makes because it will read the DNA the same. DNA is universal. And as a matter of fact, that's a lab we are going to do this year. We are going to take genes from a jellyfish, put it in an E. coli, and you're going to have E. coli that makes a jellyfish protein. And that's where transgenics and GMOs and all that sort of genetic stuff comes from. It's the idea that DNA is universal. If this code of DNA codes for making insulin in me, and I put it in a dog, it'll make insulin in the dog. If I put it in a rabbit, it'll make that insulin in a rabbit. It will make that same protein no matter what organism. I can even put it in a tree, and the tree would make insulin. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but ultimately that's the deal. And again, we also see certain similarities. All living things are made of cells. That does not change across the board. Our biochemistry is the same. All living things are composed of proteins, of carbohydrates, of lipids. All living things, we see some of those same things. And our metabolic processes, a lot of them are the same. For example, the first step of cell respiration, glycolysis, you may remember this, is the first step where glucose gets split into two pyruvates. It's almost identical in all living things. Even before mitochondria were around, bacteria perform glycolysis. And the glycolysis in a bacterium is almost exactly the same set of 8 steps that occurs in me, that occurs in a tree, that occurs in a mushroom. So that sort of ties us together again and unifies us, that there's certain things that all living things share that show our unity across the board. All right, so that's our introduction to biology, sort of chapter 1. If you have any questions, please come see me, because you will be taking a quiz on this information, and I wouldn't want anybody to start off the year wrong. It's not a hard chapter, but and we will do some discussion of it in class as well.